The glittering chandeliers above her head sparkled as if they whispered secrets of a life she had never touched, a life she could only dream of: wealth, luxury, and a delicious taste of freedom. Alina stood outside the grand ballroom, clutching the tray of champagne flutes with trembling hands, her simple black uniform reminding her that she belonged on the other side of the line, the side where servants served and guests reveled. But her heart belonged with the music, the laughter, the gowns stitched in diamonds, and the men whose eyes spoke of power and empires. It was in that moment she told herself, with a strange fire burning in her chest, "One day, I will not serve here. I will stand here, dressed in silk, holding not trays but the hand of a man who can change my life forever." Her world until now had been painted in dull strokes of poverty. The small apartment she shared with her widowed mother smelled constantly of damp walls and cheap candles trying to disguise hunger. Every day she worked shifts in hotels and event halls, just enough to keep food on the table. But every night, when silence wrapped itself around her, she opened glossy magazines borrowed from a thrift store and ran her fingers across the faces of women who had what she craved: security, beauty, and a place in society where fear of tomorrow did not exist. They weren't better than her, she often thought. They just had opportunity, and she would find hers. That evening, as she moved through the crowd of millionaires and high society elites, her eyes locked on one man who seemed different from the rest. Tall, poised, with sharp features softened only by the slight curve of his lips when he smiled politely at those around him. He didn't laugh loudly or boast about his watch. He stood quietly in a corner, as if even luxury bored him. Alina caught herself staring too long, almost tripping over her tray. The man's gaze met hers, briefly, but in that glance was something she couldn't explain: recognition, perhaps curiosity. She turned quickly, cheeks burning. But her heart whispered, "Remember him." Later that night, when the event ended, Alina walked home in the cold. She wrapped her thin coat tighter and repeated her mantra: "I will not be poor forever. I will marry a man who can open the gates of this world for me." The dream was not about laziness or greed. It was survival, a longing for beauty, and maybe even for love that could flourish without the constant shadow of unpaid bills. She knew people judged women who dreamed like that. But Alina didn't care. She had only one life, and she refused to spend it counting coins at a grocery store. Days turned into weeks. She returned to her routine of working long hours, caring for her sick mother, and stealing moments of fantasy by watching glamorous couples pass by in their cars. But fate, it seemed, had been watching her. Because 2 months later, when she was serving again at a charity gala, she saw him, the same man from the ballroom. This time, he was speaking on stage, his voice calm yet commanding. His name was Daniel Volkov, a self-made millionaire known for his sharp investments and philanthropic projects. The crowd adored him, showering applause as he stepped down. Alina couldn't take her eyes off him. And when he walked past her, his gaze lingered again, longer this time. Enough for her to feel noticed, seen, as if destiny had brushed her shoulder. That night, she couldn't sleep. Could it be possible, she thought? Was this the door she had been waiting for? But doubts followed quickly. Why would a man like him ever look at her, a waitress with worn-out shoes? Still, a seed had been planted. And Alina, with her quiet determination, was not the kind to let seeds wither. The following week, she did something bold. She borrowed her friend's dress, applied lipstick she had been saving for special occasions, and attended a public business networking event where she knew Daniel might appear. She was nervous, her hands shaking, but she carried herself with the grace she had practiced in front of the mirror 1,000 times. And there he was again, surrounded by people eager to impress him. She lingered near the refreshment table, rehearsing lines in her head. Finally, when the crowd shifted, she stepped forward. "Mr. Volkov," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. He turned, surprised, his eyes softening with recognition. "Haven't I seen you before?" Her heart raced. "Yes, I've worked at some of the events you attended." "Ah." He nodded slowly, studying her. "But you're not working tonight." "No," she smiled faintly. "Tonight, I came as myself." For a brief silence, their worlds hung suspended, his filled with power, hers with hunger, yet somehow colliding in that moment of honesty. Daniel was intrigued. Unlike the polished, rehearsed conversations he endured daily, there was something raw and unpolished about this young woman who dared to speak to him so directly. He didn't dismiss her, as he did with many others. Instead, he asked her name. "Alina," she whispered, and that whisper carried the weight of her dreams. That night, as she returned home, her mother sleeping peacefully in their cramped apartment, Alina's lips carried a faint smile. She had done it. She had crossed the invisible line between the life she had and the life she wanted. And though nothing was certain, she felt a shift in the universe. Daniel Volkov now knew her name. And sometimes, that was all it took for dreams to begin unfolding. The following days felt like a secret fire burning inside Alina. Every ordinary sound, the clinking of dishes at work, the creak of the bus on her morning commute, seemed lighter, as though the world itself had begun whispering, "Something is coming." She couldn't stop replaying Daniel's voice in her head, that single moment when he had said her name, as though he was tasting it for the first time. It was only a brief encounter, yet it had sparked a courage in her she never knew existed. She told herself not to build castles out of a glance, but hope was a dangerous thing. It bloomed in her chest like spring after a long, merciless winter. Weeks later, fate tested her again. She had taken a part-time position at a hotel that often hosted business meetings. She was carrying a silver tray of coffee cups when she entered the conference room, and froze. Daniel was seated at the head of the table, discussing figures with a group of executives. His crisp navy suit, the way his fingers tapped rhythmically against the table, commanded the entire room. Alina's heart leapt, but she forced her steps to remain steady. This time, his gaze found her instantly. His words didn't falter, but his eyes followed her as she set down the tray. She could feel it, the weight of recognition, the curiosity that hadn't faded. When the meeting ended, as the others filtered out, Daniel paused near the doorway. "You again," he said softly, almost amused. Alina's breath caught. "Yes, seems the world keeps placing me in your path. Or perhaps," he said, studying her face, "you keep placing yourself in mine." The words stung with truth. She lowered her eyes, unsure how to respond. But Daniel didn't sound mocking. Instead, there was intrigue, as though he was trying to solve a puzzle she represented. "Would you have coffee with me?" he asked suddenly, his tone casual but his eyes intent. For a second, Alina thought she had imagined it. But when he repeated the question, her lips formed the answer before her brain caught up. Yes. They met later that evening in the quiet corner of the hotel cafe. Alina had changed out of her uniform, into a simple white blouse and a skirt that wasn't new but was pressed neatly. She worried she looked too plain for a man like him, but Daniel greeted her with a warmth that disarmed her fears. "You're different from the women I usually meet," he said, sipping his coffee. "In a good way, I hope." He smiled faintly. "In a real way. Most of them talk like they're selling themselves. Titles, connections, expensive trips. You just speak." Alina chuckled nervously. "Maybe because I don't have much else to offer." Daniel's eyes softened, but she quickly changed the subject, not wanting his pity. They spoke of small things first. Books, travel, the chaos of the city, but slowly, their conversation deepened. She told him about her love for art, how she sketched designs when she had a spare moment. He told her about his beginnings, the son of a factory worker who built his fortune through relentless work and ruthless decisions. He rarely spoke of his past, but with her, the words seemed to flow. Time melted away. Hours later, as they walked out into the night, Alina's heart raced with something she hadn't expected. Not just hope of a wealthy life, but the dangerous flicker of genuine connection. Over the following weeks, they met again, sometimes for coffee, sometimes at quiet parks where Daniel escaped the noise of his world. Alina never pressured him, never played the games other women did. And Daniel, who was used to flattery and calculated charm, found himself strangely at peace in her company. But whispers began. One evening, Alina overheard two women at the hotel talking. "Have you seen that girl with Mr. Volkov?" One sneered. "She's nothing. Just a waitress, chasing gold like the rest." The other laughed cruelly. "She'll never last. Men like him don't marry girls like her. She's a distraction, at best." Alina walked away quickly, their words stabbing at her confidence. At home, as she folded laundry beside her mother, she asked herself the question she feared most. Was she truly different, or was she exactly what they said, a dreamer chasing a life too far from her reach? But the next time she saw Daniel, the doubt faded, if only for a while. He looked at her with eyes that stripped away the noise of the world. He listened when she spoke. He cared, she was certain. One night, as they walked along the riverside, the city lights reflecting in the water, Daniel stopped suddenly. "Alina," he said, his voice low, "do you ever wonder if we're walking into something impossible?" She turned to him, her heart trembling. "All the time, but impossible things are the only ones worth chasing." He laughed softly, shaking his head as though she had disarmed him again. But the seriousness lingered in his expression. He knew what she didn't, how his world worked, how ruthless society could be to women like her. Yet he couldn't stay away. For Alina, every step with him was both a dream and a risk. She knew love alone might not be enough to secure a place in his gilded life. Wealth, luxury, respect, they were all part of the dream she had whispered to herself years ago. But now that she stood on the edge of it, the question haunted her. Would he see her as a woman worth building a future with, or would she remain a fleeting chapter in his extraordinary story? That night, when she returned home, she stood before the cracked mirror in her room. Her reflection stared back at her. Not the servant, not the dreamer, but a woman on the brink of something that could change everything. She touched the glass lightly and whispered, "Don't give up now. You've come too far." The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear, Alina would not let this chance slip. She was ready to risk heartbreak, to fight whispers, and to hold on to the dream that had carried her through hunger and darkness. For she knew deep down, her story had only just begun. The first crack in the dream came on an evening that began like a fairy tale. Daniel had invited Alina to a private dinner at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. She had borrowed a gown from a friend, deep emerald silk that clung to her like a promise. For once, she looked like she belonged in the world she longed for. As she entered the restaurant on Daniel's arm, she caught her reflection in the gold-framed mirrors. Not a servant, not an outsider, just a woman beside a man whose very presence commanded the room. But the whispers followed them like shadows. Eyes turned, some in curiosity, others in disdain. Among the guests were socialites who had chased Daniel for years, women with designer names stitched into their very skin. They glanced at Alina, their painted smiles dripping with venom. Halfway through the evening, a woman approached their table. She was stunning. Tall, dressed in red, with confidence dripping from every move. "Daniel," she purred, ignoring Alina completely. "It's been too long." Daniel stood politely, greeting her with the kind of practiced smile he reserved for business associates. "Clara," he said, "good to see you." Clara's eyes flickered toward Alina for the first time, scanning her from head to toe. "And this is Alina," Daniel said firmly, his tone carrying an unspoken warning. Clara's smirk barely concealed her contempt. "Lovely. I suppose everyone needs variety now and then." Alina felt the sting, but she kept her chin high. She had learned long ago that silence was sometimes stronger than words. Yet inside, her heart shook. After Clara left, Daniel sighed. "I'm sorry. She can be cruel." Alina forced a smile. "I've faced worse." But when she lay awake that night, Clara's words echoed in her mind. Variety. A distraction. Nothing more. The doubts grew louder in the weeks that followed. Daniel continued to see her, taking her to places she had only dreamed of, private gardens, quiet escapes beyond the city. With him, she felt safe, cherished. But outside those moments, the world sharpened its claws. At the hotel, coworkers whispered behind her back. Some accused her of being shameless, others envied her boldness. Even her childhood friend, Liza, who had once encouraged her dreams, grew distant. "Alina," Liza said one evening, her tone heavy with resentment, "don't you see? Men like him don't marry girls like us. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak." Alina's throat tightened. "And what if you're wrong? What if love can break those rules?" Liza shook her head. "Love doesn't pay the price of entry into his world. Money does. Status does. And we have neither." The words sliced deep, but Alina refused to let them root. She couldn't. Not when Daniel's hand in hers felt more real than anything she'd ever known. Still, cracks deepened. At one of Daniel's charity events, she was introduced formally as his guest. For a moment, she basked in the warmth of chandeliers, the sweetness of fine wine, the illusion of belonging. But whispers trailed her everywhere. Is she his assistant? No, just another pretty face trying her luck. She'll be gone in a month. Alina smiled through it all, but inside, she burned. Each word felt like a battle she had to fight silently, proving herself again and again without a voice to defend her. That night, as she and Daniel left, she finally spoke. "Do they matter to you?" Daniel looked at her, puzzled. "Who? Them. The ones who talk. The ones who think I don't belong with you." He paused, his jaw tightening. "They've always talked. About me. About anyone close to me. I stopped caring a long time ago. But I care," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "Because they're not wrong, Daniel. I don't have what they do. I'm not one of them. And maybe I never will be." He reached for her hand, firm and steady. "Alina, I don't need another one of them. I need you." His words wrapped around her like silk, soothing the wounds of the evening. Yet deep down, she wondered if love alone could shield them from a world that thrived on rules she had no power to rewrite. Her fears proved right sooner than she expected. One evening, Daniel's younger sister, Elena, requested to meet her. They met in a cafe, Elena arriving in a sleek coat, her hair pinned like royalty. "I wanted to see you myself," Elena said, stirring her tea slowly. "Daniel speaks highly of you." Elena offered a tentative smile. "I hope that's a good thing." Elena's eyes softened briefly, but her tone remained sharp. "I don't doubt that you're kind, or that you care for him. But you must understand, our world is not kind. The people in it will not forgive you for trying to rise above where you started." Elena bristled. "So I should step aside? Leave him to someone more suitable?" Elena studied her quietly. "If you love him, you'll protect him. And sometimes protection means sacrifice." The conversation haunted Elena long after Elena left. She couldn't tell Daniel. He had enough enemies to fight already. But the seed of doubt grew heavier. Could she truly withstand the storm that came with loving a man like him? Yet every time she considered walking away, she remembered the way he looked at her, the rare softness in his eyes when he let his guard down. She remembered the warmth of his hand, the way her name sounded on his lips. And she knew, leaving him would be like cutting the wings off her own soul. So she made a silent vow. If she was to survive in his world, she would not rely only on his protection. She would build her own strength, carve her own place, and prove to everyone, perhaps even to herself, that she wasn't just chasing wealth or luxury. She was chasing a dream that was hers to claim, no matter how impossible it seemed. And as the city lights glittered outside her window that night, Elena whispered into the darkness, "I will not break. Not now." The war had begun, and she was ready. The storm broke sooner than Elena expected. Daniel had invited her to his company's annual gala, a night where investors, partners, and the city's most powerful gathered beneath glittering chandeliers. For Elena, it was both a dream and a nightmare. She had spent days preparing, borrowing a gown from a second-hand boutique and styling her hair with trembling hands. When she looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. Tonight, she would not be the girl who carried trays. Tonight, she would walk beside Daniel as his equal, or at least try to. The hall was a palace of gold and glass. As they entered together, Daniel's hand resting gently at her back, cameras flashed, voices murmured. For the first time, Elena felt the weight of being visible, every gaze dissecting her presence. Some offered polite nods, but many eyes narrowed, their disdain unmasked. The first blow came in the form of Clara, the woman in red who had once sneered at her. Clara approached with a glass of champagne, her smile sharp as glass. "Daniel," she said sweetly, "you've brought your companion." Her gaze slid over Elena like a blade. "How refreshing. You always did have an eye for projects." Elena held her breath, forcing a polite smile. Daniel's hand tightened slightly around hers, a subtle signal to stay calm. "Clara," he said firmly, "Elena is not a project. She's someone I care about." The words warmed Elena, but Clara only smirked. "Care is such a temporary thing in our circles, isn't it? Well, enjoy your evening. I'm sure it will be educational." She drifted away, leaving a trail of venom. Later, as Daniel mingled with investors, Elena wandered to the balcony for air. That's when another confrontation arrived, this time in the form of a silver-haired man with sharp eyes. "You must be Alina," he said, his voice smooth but cold. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "I'm Viktor Ivanov," he introduced himself. "One of Daniel's oldest partners." He sipped his drink, studying her. "Do you know how many women I've seen come and go from his side? Dozens. All thought they could tame him, or at least claim a piece of his world. They never lasted. Do you know why?" Alina swallowed. "Because they didn't love him." Viktor chuckled darkly. "Because love is not the currency here. Power is, wealth is, influence is, and forgive me, but you seem to have none of those." She straightened her shoulders, though her voice trembled. "Maybe I don't, but I have something your world doesn't value: resilience. I've survived storms you couldn't imagine. And I'm not here to take from him. I'm here because I believe in him." For the first time, Viktor's smirk faltered, as though he hadn't expected her to fight back. But he leaned closer, his tone warning. "Belief won't protect you. Remember that." He left her standing in the cold air, her hands trembling but her spirit burning. When Daniel returned to her side, he noticed her pale face. "What happened?" "Nothing I can't handle," she whispered, forcing a smile. But inside, she knew the battle lines had been drawn. In the weeks that followed, the war intensified. Rumors spread in society pages, whispers of Alina's past, of her poverty, twisted into ugly stories. Some claimed she was after Daniel's money, others that she had manipulated her way into his life. Every headline, every whisper, was a knife aimed not just at her, but at Daniel as well. One evening, Daniel confronted her. "Alina, I need to know if this is too much for you. The press, the gossip, the constant attacks. I can protect you, but only if you're sure you want this." Her chest ached at the weariness in his eyes. "Daniel, I didn't walk into your world expecting it to be easy. I knew it would be a fight. But I'm not walking away. Not from you." His gaze softened, and for a moment, the walls around him seemed to fall. He pulled her close, whispering, "Then we'll face it together." But fate wasn't finished testing her. One afternoon, as Alina was leaving the hotel after a long shift, Clara appeared again, her red lips curved into a cruel smile. "Do you really think he'll choose you?" she asked, blocking Alina's path. "I've known Daniel for years. He respects power, legacy, wealth. You're a distraction, nothing more. When he tires of protecting you, he'll leave you behind. It's inevitable." Alina's jaw clenched. "Maybe. But until that day comes, he's with me. And that bothers you more than you'll ever admit." Clara's eyes flashed with fury. "You think you've won something? You've only borrowed time, and time always runs out." She swept away, leaving Alina shaken but determined. For every cruel word, every attempt to break her, Alina grew stronger. She refused to let their venom define her worth. Still, the weight of it all pressed heavily on her. At night, when her mother coughed in the other room, Alina wondered if she was selfish for chasing this dream. She had wanted wealth and luxury to escape poverty, but now she realized she was fighting not for gold, but for love that came with impossible costs. Yet love, she told herself, was worth every wound. One night, as she sat sketching by the dim light of her lamp, Daniel called unexpectedly. "Pack a bag," he said. "I'm taking you away for a few days." "Where?" she asked, startled. "Somewhere the world can't reach us." When they arrived at a secluded villa by the sea, Alina felt her breath stolen by the beauty, the vast horizon, the scent of salt and freedom. For 3 days, they lived without whispers, without judgment. They laughed, cooked together, walked barefoot on the sand. For the first time, Alina felt the dream wasn't just about wealth or status. It was about moments like this, where love was enough to silence the noise. But as the waves crashed against the shore, Alina knew reality waited beyond the villa walls. Their love was real, yes. But could it survive the war outside? Could she? Her reflection in the glass door showed a woman both fragile and fierce, standing at the edge of a dream that might shatter, or become her destiny. She whispered to the night, "I will not lose him. Not now. Not ever." And the ocean roared back, as though sealing her vow. The illusion of peace from their seaside escape shattered the moment they returned to the city. Within days, Daniel was consumed by meetings, negotiations, and whispers of a new business deal that could either strengthen his empire or ruin him. Alina watched from the sidelines, her presence both a comfort and a complication in his world. She had barely adjusted to the chaos when betrayal struck. It began with a headline splashed across the society pages: "Volkov's mystery girl, is she a gold digger?" Beneath it, photographs of Alina leaving the hotel in her uniform, carrying groceries in cheap plastic bags, walking through the shabby neighborhood where her mother lived. The article painted her as an opportunist, a girl from poverty clawing her way into Daniel's fortune. They twisted details, calling her calculated, ambitious, and dangerous for his reputation. Alina's hands trembled as she held the paper. She felt stripped, exposed, her private life displayed for the world's ridicule. When Daniel saw it, his jaw clenched with fury. "Who did this?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'll find out," Daniel said through gritted teeth. "And they'll regret it." But the damage was done. Investors began questioning Daniel's judgment, hinting that his personal life was becoming a liability. Rivals whispered that he was distracted, vulnerable. And Clara, with her perfect smile, used the moment to strike. At a charity board meeting, Clara leaned close to Daniel, her voice dripping with concern. "I warned you, didn't I? She's dragging you down. Look at the headlines. The investors are nervous. The board is watching. Do you really want to risk everything for a girl who doesn't belong here?" Daniel's eyes hardened, but her words echoed louder than he admitted. For the first time, he hesitated, not in his love for Alina, but in the cost of keeping her. That night, Alina sensed the distance in him. He was quieter, his gaze troubled. Finally, she asked, "Do you regret it?" "Us?" Daniel turned sharply. "No, never." But his pause betrayed him. Her heart clenched. "They're right, aren't they? I don't belong here. I'm ruining your reputation, your work, everything you built." He stepped closer, his hands firm on her shoulders. "Don't ever say that. You're not the problem. They are. Then why do I feel like I'm losing you?" she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. He pulled her into his arms, but the silence between them said more than his embrace. The betrayal cut deeper when Alina discovered who had leaked her private life. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone she had once trusted, Liza, her childhood friend. She found out one afternoon when she confronted a hotel worker who had overheard Liza bragging about selling Alina's story to a journalist for money. When Alina confronted her, Liza's face twisted with a mix of guilt and bitterness. "You think you're better than the rest of us now. Living in his world, acting like you belong. I was drowning in debt, Alina. They offered me money, and I took it. Don't act like you wouldn't have done the same once." Alina's chest ached with betrayal. "I would never have sold you out. Not for anything." But Liza only looked away, shame and resentment tangled in her eyes. That night, Alina walked the city streets alone, the weight of it all pressing on her. The dream she had chased for so long felt like glass in her hands, beautiful, but sharp enough to cut her to pieces. When she returned to Daniel's penthouse, she found him on the balcony, staring out at the skyline. His expression was unreadable. "They're threatening to pull out of the deal," he said quietly. "They say I've lost focus. That my personal life is compromising my decisions." Alina froze. "And what are you going to do?" He turned, his eyes filled with torment. "I can fight them, but it would be easier if..." He stopped himself, unable to finish the thought. "If I wasn't here," she said for him, her voice breaking. Daniel closed his eyes, pain etched across his face. "Alina," her tears fell silently, "I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. I thought I could handle their world. I thought love was enough. But maybe it isn't." "Don't say that," he whispered fiercely, gripping her hand. "Don't you dare walk away." But she saw the truth in his eyes, the pull between love and empire, heart and duty. And for the first time, she wondered if the strongest choice wasn't to fight, but to let go. That night, Alina sat by the window, watching the city lights blur through her tears. She had dreamed of this life, wealth, luxury, security, but no dream had prepared her for the cost. To stand beside a man like Daniel meant more than love. It meant surviving a war she wasn't sure she could win. And yet, even through the pain, her heart whispered the same vow: "I will not give up." Not yet. The battle wasn't over. Not for her. Not for them. Alina woke the next morning with her resolve hardened like steel. The betrayal still stung, the headlines still lingered, and Daniel's hesitation still echoed in her heart. But she refused to be defeated. If she allowed the world to label her a gold digger, if she let Clara or the press define her worth, then she truly would lose Daniel, not because he stopped loving her, but because she had surrendered without a fight. She remembered her mother's words long ago, whispered on a night when bills piled higher than food on the table. "You may not have money, Alina, but you have strength. Never let anyone tell you you're less because of where you come from." That strength would be her weapon now. The next day, instead of hiding from the gossip, Alina walked into the hotel lobby where Daniel's world of suits, investors, and socialites gathered daily. Whispers rippled through the crowd as she entered, not in designer gowns, but in a simple, elegant dress she had saved for years, her head high, her eyes steady. Clara was there, of course, her smile sharp as a blade. "Well, if it isn't the star of the tabloids. Brave of you to show your face." Alina met her gaze without flinching. "Brave? No. Necessary. People can say what they want, but I'm not ashamed of who I am." Clara's smile faltered slightly. "Confidence doesn't change reality, darling. You'll never be more than a scandal in his world." "Maybe," Alina said softly, "but at least I won't waste my life tearing others down to make myself feel taller." The sting in her words left Clara speechless, though her eyes blazed with fury. Later that afternoon, Alina made another choice. She began volunteering at a youth center in the poorest district of the city, a place she knew well, because it wasn't far from where she grew up. She taught classes, helped organize food drives, and listened to the stories of girls who, like her, dreamed of escaping their struggles. She didn't do it for headlines. She did it for herself. But slowly, whispers began to spread, not of a gold digger, but of a girl who had never forgotten her roots. A journalist, curious about her side of the story, followed her one day. When he asked why she was here instead of clinging to Daniel's fortune, her answer was simple. "Because my worth isn't measured by his wealth. It's measured by what I give back." The article that followed painted a very different picture. Beyond the gossip, Alina Ivanova's heart for the forgotten. It didn't erase the earlier scandal, but it shifted the narrative. People began to see her not as a scandal, but as a contradiction to it. Meanwhile, Daniel watched from the shadows, torn between pride and awe. He had expected her to crumble under the pressure, maybe even to walk away. Instead, she rose higher. She fought not with his money, but with her own courage. One night, as he returned from another exhausting board meeting, he found her at the penthouse balcony, staring out at the skyline. "You amaze me," he admitted quietly. She turned, surprised. "Me? Yes. They tried to break you. Even I." He stopped, his voice thick with regret. "Even I doubted you for a moment. And still, you refused to give up." Alina stepped closer. "I didn't fight for me, Daniel. I fought for us. For the chance to prove that what we have is more than their world can define." His hands cupped her face, his eyes burning with something deeper than desire, something like reverence. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. But the battle was not yet won. Clara, infuriated by Alina's growing reputation, made her boldest move yet. She leaked confidential documents hinting at instability in Daniel's business empire, claiming he was losing control because of his reckless affair. The board summoned him to an emergency meeting. The stakes were higher than ever. If he couldn't restore their confidence, they would push him out of his own company. Daniel went, his jaw set, his mind sharpened. But what he didn't expect was Alina following him into that room. The board members frowned at her presence, whispering among themselves. Clara smirked from her seat, certain Alina's presence would be another disaster. But when Daniel opened his mouth to speak, Alina stepped forward first. "Excuse me," she said firmly, her voice carrying across the polished oak table. "You see me as a distraction, as a scandal, but you're wrong. I am not here to weaken Daniel Volkov. I am here because I believe in him more than anyone in this room. You want to question his judgment? Then question mine, too. Because I chose him. Not for his money, not for his power, but for the man he is when no one is watching." The room fell silent. Even Clara's smirk faltered. Daniel stared at her, stunned. For once, he wasn't the one commanding the room. She was. One of the older board members leaned back in his chair, studying Alina with newfound respect. "Bold words," he said slowly, Perhaps too bold, but refreshing. The tide didn't turn completely that night. But seeds were planted. Seeds of doubt about Clara, seeds of respect for Alina, seeds of trust that Daniel was more than the scandal painted around him. When they left the building together, Daniel caught her hand and pulled her close. His voice shook with emotion. "You risked everything walking into that room." "So did you," she replied softly. "That's why we belong together." For the first time, Daniel truly believed it. Not just with his heart, but with his mind. Alina wasn't his weakness, she was his strength. And though the storm wasn't over, he knew now, he would fight for her as fiercely as she had fought for him. The city glittered that night as if mocking the storm brewing beneath its lights. Newspapers still churned with Clara's scandal, and investors hovered like vultures, waiting for Daniel to stumble. But beneath the chaos, something stronger pulsed between Daniel and Alina, a quiet defiance neither gossip nor betrayal could extinguish. Still, Clara wasn't finished. At a lavish charity gala, an event Daniel couldn't skip without raising suspicion, Clara made her grand move. She arrived in a gown that sparkled under the chandeliers, her smile polished for cameras, her hand resting possessively on the arm of an influential board member. When Daniel and Alina entered together, the crowd's whispers swelled like a tide. Flashbulbs lit up, eager to capture the contrast. Clara, the perfect heiress, versus Alina, the scandal-ridden outsider. Clara wasted no time. She approached Daniel with calculated grace, her voice loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear. "Daniel," she purred, "it's not too late to save your reputation. Step away from this circus and reclaim the legacy you're meant for. Or do you really intend to risk everything for her?" Her gaze flicked to Alina, dripping with disdain. Daniel's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Alina stepped forward. "No, Clara, the question isn't what he'll risk for me. The question is why you're so desperate to erase me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Clara's eyes narrowed. "You think you belong here. In this world, you're a charity case wrapped in borrowed confidence. And when Daniel loses everything because of you, where will you be? Back in the gutter where you started." Alina's chest burned with anger, but her voice was steady. "Maybe I did come from the gutter. But at least I climbed out without stepping on others to get higher." "That's more than you can say." For a heartbeat, the room froze, then whispers broke out, some admiring, some scandalized. Clara's face hardened. "You'll regret crossing me." But Daniel finally spoke, his voice sharp as a blade. "No, Clara, it's you who should regret underestimating her. This isn't about money or reputation, it's about integrity. And Alina has more of it in her little finger than you've ever shown in your entire life." The board members who had attended the gala exchanged looks, their opinions shifting subtly. The seed Alina had planted in that meeting was growing faster than Clara had anticipated. Fury simmered in Clara's eyes, but she masked it with a brittle smile. "We'll see, Daniel. The world isn't as forgiving as you imagine." That night, as the gala ended, Daniel pulled Alina aside to the quiet terrace. His hands cupped her face, his voice low but urgent. "You stood there and faced her down like you were born for it. Do you know how proud I am of you?" Her lips trembled. "I was terrified, but I couldn't let her take everything we fought for." He kissed her then. Not the controlled, guarded kisses of before, but one filled with fire and certainty. For the first time, the fear of loss didn't shadow it. But victory was fragile. 2 days later, Daniel's enemies struck their hardest blow. Clara, cornered and desperate, leaked forged documents suggesting financial fraud within his company. The scandal exploded across every screen. Volkov Empire in crisis. Fraud allegations rock business titan. Authorities announced an investigation. Investors panicked. Stocks plummeted. Daniel locked himself in his office with his legal team, fighting to clear his name. But the weight was immense. Even the strongest empires could crumble under the suspicion of corruption. Alina felt the pressure pressing in from all sides. The world whispered that this was her fault, that Daniel had been solid before she came along, and now he was falling apart. One night, she found him in the dark, staring out at the city. His tie was undone, his face drawn. "Maybe they were right," he murmured. "Maybe loving you was my greatest mistake." Her heart shattered, but she refused to let his words be the end. She stepped closer, her voice shaking. "Then let me prove them wrong." Let me fight beside you. You're not alone in this, Daniel. You never were." He looked at her, torn between despair and hope. For the first time, he allowed himself to lean on her, to let her strength steady him. And together, they began to uncover the truth. Alina remembered the arrogance in Clara's eyes, the way she always seemed too confident. With quiet determination, she dug through whispers from the youth center, contacts from her old neighborhood, and the hidden corners of society where Clara's polished image didn't reach. Piece by piece, she gathered evidence, not of Daniel's fraud, but of Clara's manipulations. It was risky, dangerous. If Clara caught wind of it, she would destroy Alina completely. But Alina pressed on, fueled by love and fire. When she finally placed the folder of proof in Daniel's hands, documents, recordings, testimonies, his eyes widened with disbelief and gratitude. "You did this," he whispered. She nodded. "For us. For you. I won't let her win." Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the only anchor in a storm. "I swear to you, Alina, when this is over, I'll never let you doubt where you belong again." And as the storm reached its peak, Alina knew the final battle was coming. Clara had played her last card, and now it was their turn to strike back. But victory would come at a price. The question was, were they strong enough to pay it? The storm that Clara unleashed reached its peak like thunder over the city. Every news outlet screamed with accusations. Shareholders demanded explanations. Investigators swarmed Daniel's offices, their sharp eyes searching for cracks in his empire. But Daniel was no ordinary man. And with Alina at his side, he refused to crumble. On the morning of the board's decisive vote, where Daniel's position as head of his company would either be reaffirmed or stripped, he walked into the towering glass building with Alina's hand firmly in his. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions, their voices a frenzy. "Mr. Volkov, are you guilty of fraud? Who is the girl with you? Is she involved? Alina, did you push him into this mess for money?" Alina met the cameras head-on. Her voice cut through the chaos. "The truth will come out. And when it does, you'll see who the real liar is." Inside the boardroom, tension crackled like electricity. Clara sat poised near the head of the table, her red lips curved into a confident smirk. She had orchestrated every step of this downfall, and she was moments away from watching Daniel's empire collapse. But Daniel wasn't alone anymore. When the chairman demanded evidence of his innocence, Daniel rose. "Before I defend myself, allow me to introduce the woman the press calls a scandal." He extended his hand, guiding Alina forward. "Alina Ivanova." Murmurs rippled through the board. Clara's smirk widened. She thought Alina's presence would be Daniel's final mistake. But then Alina placed a thick folder of documents on the polished table. "These," she said clearly, "are records proving Clara orchestrated the leaks, manipulated the press, and forged documents to frame Daniel Volkov. I gathered them myself, from sources she thought too low to ever matter. But the truth always matters." The room erupted in gasps. Board members leaned forward, eyes widening as they skimmed through transcripts, recordings, and signed statements. Clara's face blanched. "This is absurd. She's lying. That girl would say anything to keep her place beside him." "Enough," snapped one of the senior members. His sharp gaze pinned Clara. "We will verify these, of course. But if even half of this is true, your credibility is finished." Daniel's eyes locked on Clara's, his voice like steel. "You wanted to destroy me. Instead, you revealed who you truly are. And now, you've lost." For the first time, Clara's composure cracked. She rose, her voice shrill. "You'll regret this. Both of you." But her threats fell flat in the face of the evidence. Guards moved discreetly toward her as whispers of legal action and criminal charges filled the air. The vote that followed was unanimous. Daniel retained his empire. Clara was finished. When the meeting ended, Daniel and Alina walked out together, the world watching. Cameras flashed again, but this time, the story had changed. Reporters shouted new headlines. Clara exposed as mastermind behind scandal. Alina Ivanova clears Daniel Volkov's name. From maid to heroine, the woman who saved a billionaire. That night, Daniel led Alina to the rooftop of his penthouse. The city sprawled below them, endless and glittering. He turned to her, his eyes burning with gratitude and something even deeper. "You saved me," he said softly. She shook her head. No, we saved each other. You gave me the courage to fight. I just gave it back to you. For a moment, he studied her, the girl who had walked into his world with nothing but her heart, and now stood beside him like an equal. His chest tightened with a feeling he had buried for too long. I thought love was my weakness, he confessed. But you've shown me it's my greatest strength. Alina, I don't want just to fight with you. I want to live with you. Always. Her breath caught as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, the diamond glowed in the city lights, not as a symbol of wealth, but of choice. Marry me, he said simply. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, yes. 1,000 times, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and for the first time, Alina felt the weight of her dream transform into reality. Not a fragile glass fantasy, but something unbreakable, forged in trials, betrayal, and love stronger than fire. As they kissed beneath the endless night sky, the city roared beneath them. Somewhere, the world still whispered, still judged. But none of it mattered. Because in that moment, wealth and power meant nothing compared to the truth they had fought for together. That love, real, fierce, unshakable, was the greatest treasure of all. And for the first time, Alina knew with certainty, she wasn't just living the dream. She was the dream. And so, what began as a fragile dream of wealth and love became a storm-tested bond no power could break. Alina proved that strength, courage, and heart could outshine the brightest diamonds, and Daniel discovered that true fortune lay not in empires, but in the woman who stood unshaken beside him. Their journey reminds us that sometimes, the most impossible dreams become reality when we dare to fight for them. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales of love, betrayal, and triumph. You won't want to miss what comes next.